There are a ton of sequels. Sequels are everywhere. They're happening all the time, and they're not going to let up because they make lots of money. And some of them are awful, but some are very, very good. There's often not enough time to play all the sequels, let alone all the originals. But do you have to? Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on gameranx we ask the question, do you always have to play the original before the sequel? So there's kind of a really large number of games that I've never played. You just don't have time to play every game out there. So when a sequel comes out, and it's very highly rated, better than the original it says, I'm interested, but I don't know what to do all the time. My instinct is to play the original, and then play the sequel. And oftentimes that's exactly what I do. When Uncharted 2 came out, that's when I bought the first Uncharted. I bought it probably a week before Uncharted 2 came out, I played through it and I was like, this is a great game. And then I played Uncharted 2 and I was like, whoa, I'm really glad I played the first one before this because this eats the other one for lunch. In retrospect, I am quite happy that I played both though. And if I'd played the second, I don't know if I'd have played the first. Because all the reviews talked about how much the second trumps the first. They all say, this is better, flat out. Every single thing that they did in the first one, they did better in the second one. And I'm inclined to agree with that. That being said, if I hadn't played it, I'd know less about Nathan Drake. I'd know less about his relationship with Elena Fisher. I'd know much less about Sully, what his function is in these things. As much as they did do a good job of exposition in the second one in order to keep it from being super repetitive for people who played the first one, they did keep it a little bit more minimal than it would have been had that been the first game. On the flip side, I've played both Titanfall 1 and Titanfall 2. To be completely honest, I don't even know why we're even talking about Titanfall 1 anymore. Titanfall 2 is such a marked improvement on Titanfall 1, and I know that there are going to be people that disagree with me on this, and that's okay. If you like Titanfall 1, no problem. But I personally much prefer the second. I like that there's a campaign. I like that there's some world building. It's just a bit tighter in my opinion, and I really don't know that I really care enough about Titanfall 1 to say I'm glad I played it. I would have liked Titanfall 1 to just be Titanfall 2. Titanfall 2 feels like a complete game, where Titanfall 1 to me feels kind of like a free-to-play game that you paid for. It's just not enough for me to call like a full-blown experience. And again, that's my opinion. I'm not angry at anybody who has a conflicting opinion with that. It's fine. But we're just kind of sitting down and saying here, there are certain types of games that it feels much more worthwhile to have played the whole series than to have played the sequel that sort of gets it right. Sometimes there is an overarching story arc that makes it so you feel incomplete not having played the original. And what's sad about that is sometimes that the original is a game that is on a dead system, or isn't available easily anymore. And then there's games that share a universe, but not a story. For instance, the original BioShock takes place in a multiverse alongside BioShock Infinite. Is it necessary to have played BioShock in order to go through BioShock Infinite, get everything, and enjoy it? Certainly not. In fact, a lot of people much prefer one of those two games over the other. I've seen arguments. As somebody who likes both of them, it's kind of like, I don't really agree with either of you. But still, this is a question of judgment and a question of opinion. So that means, unfortunately, the answer itself is going to be, well, kind of blurry. I've played every Final Fantasy game out of the mainline series. So I've played them on mobile, I've played them on Steam, I've played them God knows where else, I don't even know right now. But did I need to play all of those games? Do I get any Final Fantasy game's story or mechanics better for having played every single one of them, for having had the completionist attitude with a series that does not keep a consistent set of characters, a consistent story, or even a consistent universe? No. I probably could have skipped the multiplayer ones and 13 and been just fine, really. 13's sequels got significantly closer to right, but that's not really mainline Final Fantasy now, is it? Yeah, they did a much better job of fixing up Realm Reborn into something that worked much better, and a lot of people really like it. It's good. I would have been fine if I'd have just skipped it and done 15. Because, like, to be completely honest, it's just kind of like 15 better. I like the story better. I like the systems better. I think they finally figured out what Final Fantasy is in modern times, and they hadn't done that for 13 and 14. at least for me. And then there's games that have an incredibly complex story that you have no hope of understanding even if you have been the completionist and played every single one of them. I'm looking at you, Metal Gear Solid. Like, okay, at this point in my life, I think I understand the Metal Gear Solid story. I may not be right, but I think I have a pretty firm grasp on it. That being said, the amount of times I've played all of those games to get to that point is pretty high. So it seems like when you say, do you always have to play the original before the sequel? You're asking a pretty simple question, but you're not. That question is incredibly loaded, and the amount of nuance that it takes to sort through the answer is pretty high, because we can't just sit here and say yes or no. I mean, the way we have the question phrased, you could say no, and the implication would be that you don't always have to, but there's more to it than just giving that kind of an answer. Video games are incredibly varied. They're a vibrant art form that when we start creating series of games where there is a risk of a decrease in quality while there is also an opportunity to fix issues in previous installments, it throws a lot of things into chance. And I know a lot of people don't like to hear that because people like consistency. People like to think that all the time companies are improving to get better and better at making games, but I would argue that that's not necessarily true. Companies are always looking for better and better ways to make money, and sometimes sequels are a victim of that, but sometimes it also gives us better sequels. Developers are not necessarily super concerned with making the most amount of money possible. If they can stay in the black, they're usually happy as long as they get to create quality games. This is not so with publishers. Sequelitis, so to speak, is something that all publishers have. When a new IP comes out, they aren't saying, figure out a way to end this, let's make it a standalone experience and never talk of it again. Every IP is intended to be a franchise. Every IP. And if the sequel is better than the original, it's because the original made just enough to justify a sequel, but not enough for the publisher to harp on them for getting it right. But the state of the video games industry is one where consistency isn't necessarily favored, and the people that are in charge and pushing to go in a certain direction often don't have the kind of understanding that the actual creators of the games themselves do. So keep that in mind. Games are $100 million productions now. In my opinion, we should demand much more in quality and give much less in easy ways for publishers to make money off of the latest version. If we are doing franchises and series and they all just sort of build consistently on the last one, and they all do have little nods to people who have played previous games and there's something worth it in all of them, then I would say yes, you do always have to play the original before the sequel. But we're a long way from that situation. What do you think? How do you judge whether or not you're going to play the original before the sequel if you haven't already done so? Let's meet in the comments, have a chat about that. And if you enjoyed this video, please click like. If you're not subscribed to gameranx, now's a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week, but we do thank you very much for watching this one. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter @FalconTheHero, and we'll see you next time right here on gameranx.